Faudra danser avec moi. Le cordonnier s'est fait qu'est-ce que t'as-t-on dans la tête? C'est que moi.
Welcome back, dreamers. Tonight, my guest is Katie Janusz. Katie is a paranormal investigator, psychic medium, Reiki master, and the author of an award-winning book called When the Dead Speak. She has also been featured on television programs such as Ghost Adventures and Haunted Hospitals. So without further ado, grab your blanket, turn down the lights, get comfy, and let's fade away into
Dreamland.
All right, Kitty, well, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on and talking with me. I'm very excited to pick your brain and to hear about some of your experiences and some of your expertise.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, tell me how you got your start in all of this paranormal stuff.
Well, I like to tell people that I didn't really do it intentionally. I happened to grow up in a very paranormally active house, which everybody says, oh, well, how could you be so lucky? But I am the youngest of three children, and my parents bought the little pink stucco house brand new in 1955. And so my parents were the original owners of the house. And my earliest recollections of things happening would be probably when I was about 6 years old or so. We would constantly hear footsteps walking through the house, and we would be like the only ones home. And of course, back in those days, everything was carpeted. People didn't have hardwood floors. If you had hardwood floors, you covered them up with carpeting because that was all the rage. You had carpeting. So we would hear actually boot steps clomping on wood. But the whole house is carpeted. So we're like, okay, who the heck is that?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that'd be really weird. And then as we got a little bit older, we noticed things started moving on their own. And it wouldn't really move in front of us, but things would disappear and then reappear a couple days later. And I say he, because it kind of felt like a male energy in the house. And he loved to move things that were green. Any little green tchotchke or something, it might disappear for a couple of days and then reappear a few days later. And we knew we had moved it because it would reappear in a really odd place, like, on top of a door jamb or, underneath a table or just really odd places where you wouldn't set things down. And I remember one time I was like 5 or 6 years old and we were going to go to Disneyland. And I had my treasured my like $5 and change in this little green plastic treasure chest. Morning came to go to Disneyland, can't find that little treasure chest anywhere. We searched high, we searched low, could not find it. It was on top of the refrigerator. Now, a 5-year-old cannot reach the top of the refrigerator, much less why would I put it on top of the refrigerator? So, we got used to that thing going on. Okay, then it kind of escalated a little bit. We're talking over the course of like 20 years, something happening probably once or twice a week, during the day, during the night, during the afternoon. And we would come home and say, all the water in the house would be running. Hot water, cold water, showers, faucets, everything was running full blast. The footsteps would go continuously. I think one of the funniest things was we were sitting in the living room that had walls on three sides, and then it connected to the dining room. It had long windows with big flowing drapes on it. All the windows were shut. All at one time, all the curtains went and blew into the center of the room. We're like, okay. Yeah, and people say, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared to be in a haunted house? Or aren't you scared of ghosts? I'm thinking 99% of the time you're like, well, that was weird. That's odd. You don't automatically think it's something paranormal. You just think of it as something odd.
Right.
And people tell me, well, is there any kind of thing that happened that made you afraid, that made you kind of want to, make him step back a little bit? There was one time when I think he kind of crossed the line a little bit. And this was, I'd gotten into bed, and I'd only been in bed a few minutes. And all of a sudden I felt what I thought was the cat jumping up onto the bed, corner of the bed. You can feel a little thump of, a 10-pound cat hopping onto the bed. Well, yeah. The corner of the bed kept sinking down and sinking down to the point where I actually remember sitting up in bed and looking and seeing the corner of the bed, the depression in it, as though something sitting in there. And just instinctively, I just said, stop that, because he was within a foot of me. And I just stopped that. And he never did it again. So that's kind of was sort of an impetus of, well, whoever this is can kind of understand us, and we can kind of, I don't want to use the word live together, but kind of coexist with one another. He can have his space, we'll take our space. And over the course of like 20 years, as long as I lived in that house, probably at least once or twice a week, we would have something happening. So I just always kind of had this innate, curiosity and acceptance that there was some sort of consciousness after we pass away. And I live in California. It's not as good as you guys living on the East Coast. You tend to have more haunted locations out there, more buildings, more good things. But there's still a lot of haunted good stuff out here in California. And I like to go to a lot of the historic places. I do some residential cases, but my true love is the historical occasions, because my parents were also antique dealers.
Ooh.
So I also kind of grew up with that love of the history and the love that the energy that can be imprinted within an object.
Sure.
You might just kind of be drawn to certain types of antiques or objects, and you don't understand necessarily why. But you just kind of say, I kind of like that energy that object gives me, or I kind of like the way I feel when I have these kind of objects around me, sort of thing. So I kind of start collecting them. And so I always kind of had that mindset of old objects, old places having a certain type of energy and being able to feel that kind of energy back and forth. So it just kind of started from a really early age and just kind of progressed from there.
Sure. Now, you said you lived there for about 20-some years. Now, did you ever figure out, and they bought this house new, you said, correct?
They bought the house new, and there was nothing there except orange and lemon groves before these tracts were built. So I have to kind of believe that whoever was kind of coming and going in these houses was just transient energies of people who maybe had worked within the lemon groves. There was a creepy warehouse about a quarter mile from my house that had a railroad track, and that was a packing house where they would pack the citrus. And I never did like that warehouse. So, and of course, a lot of people say railroad tracks tend to be very haunted too. Anything that is very kinetic and has things moving and coming onto it tend to also be very, very haunted. But my parents never really openly discussed it. If we'd said, oh, it was the ghost, the conversation kind of stopped it there. They never discussed it with the neighbors. The neighbors never said, oh, by the way, we've got stuff going on too. Maybe it was just the generation. Maybe they just thought they'd be scaring us.
Sure.
But all the kids in the neighborhood pretty much accepted the fact that, there were ghosts in the neighborhood, but the parents never really addressed it. So we just kind of had to come to our own conclusions. But there was nothing on there except just lemon groves. It was just open land. So people who say it has to be an old house, it has to have something that happened within those given walls, within that brick structure. Not necessarily. It can be a new structure and actually be quite active.
Sure. I believe that a lot of areas generate that kind of energy. And I also believe that certain people can put off something that spirits really are attracted to.
Oh, definitely. They can either have a certain energy about them, be inviting of certain types of energy. I'm not going to say they're totally like a portal, but certain people just invite certain energies. Either they don't have healthy boundaries, or they just will be very accepting of any energy around them. Some people say that there's what's called a soul agreement, that you kind of have, a lot of other ancient cultures believe in this. As you get reincarnated, you have to learn a lesson that you didn't learn in a past life. So you have this kind of past agreement that you have to make up for in a previous life. I don't know if you've ever done past life regressions, or have talked to anybody who does past life regressions.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people that have had that done, yeah.
A lot of times things that will have occurred in a past life, you're still carrying over into this life. I did a channeling a long time ago. We used to do group channelings. This is kind of a little off subject, but we're going to circle around again. And I wanted to do a channeling of Edgar Allan Poe. I've always liked Edgar Allan Poe as a kid. My mother always thought it was kind of strange, but I was always obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe. I read all of his works from an early age. I knew everything about him. And I just wanted to channel Edgar Allan Poe. My friend says, no, I'm sure it's done 1,000 times. He's not going to want to come through, leave him alone kind of thing. I said, well, I just want to try because I think I have this connection with him. And when we do a group channeling, it's like different people seeing different perspectives of the same picture. And as we just kind of focus on reaching out to him, sure enough, I could get a visual of him. And of course, he looks pissed. He looks upset. Why are you people bothering me? So I said, I think I know you. I think we knew each other in a past life. And he kind of looks up. And my friend says, do you think you were a man or a woman in his lifetime? And I go, I think I was a man. I'm getting the name Tom or Thomas. And as soon as she said that, I get a visual of Edgar Allan Poe looking like right at me as if he recognized me. So that night, I'm like frantically Googling Thomas, Edgar Allan Poe, Tom, Googling back and forth and back and forth. One of his best friends was William Thomas, and he always referred to him as my good friend Thomas. Now, this gentleman always had a bad leg. He always had a limp. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I have a bit of a gimp myself in the same leg. Now, I don't know if this is going to carry over the soul agreement or what you want to say, but it's a heck of a coincidence that somebody that I think I was in a past life had the same affliction that I also have.
That's pretty neat.
I'd rather not limp, but it was still kind of cool. I've talked to Edgar Allan Poe a few times, but he does like his privacy. He likes to be offered a drink. He wants to be remembered for his comedies. I don't know if anybody is familiar, but Edgar Allan Poe wrote quite a few comedies, and nobody seems to remember those. They always want to read his more macabre works.
Well, he is really big in the area that I'm from, or that I live in now. I live in right outside of Charleston, South Carolina. And if you know Edgar Allan Poe, then you know Annabelle Lee, who lives in a kingdom by the sea, right?
Yep.
And that's because he fell in love with Annabelle Lee here in Charleston. And she died, and there's this big story about her walking down this certain street. And if you walk down this certain street at night, on certain nights, you can see her.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember reading a handwritten version of that poem.
Oh, that'd be
during
cool.
an Edgar Allan Poe exhibit, yeah, in his handwriting. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, that would be really neat.
That's just another thing to touch on is, how we interact with past through our past lives, through historic locations, through objects. It's all connected, and how people just say, oh, there's no such thing as ghosts. My first answer to them, my first response is, define what a ghost is.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to them of what they think a ghost is. And they'll think, somebody in a sheet or a dead person who talks, and then we'll have this conversation of what, a paranormal investigator's experience of what a ghost is. And it just kind of opens up that conversation, and they immediately become a bit more open-minded to it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, bottom line, does anybody really have that answer? Because I don't think anybody really has that answer scientifically anyway.
No, and I tell people I can only share my experiences. Everybody's had their own experiences, and I can't default what somebody else has had and tell them, no, that's wrong because I've had a slightly different experience. So we're all kind of learning this together. And unfortunately, part of what the paranormal field is because it's called a pseudoscience, is because what we're finding cannot be recreated in a laboratory setting like a traditional scientific study. So while we always have these, effects, we aren't sure what the causes are.
Sure.
Is it electromagnetic fields? Is it a certain frequency? Is it, some sort of an imprint? Is it, just the spirit actually there? What is consciousness? We just have all these questions, and we get these little bits of evidence, but we aren't quite sure how these bits of evidence are generated. And that's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I think that people that go at this in a scientific angle are trying to prove something scientifically that may not be able to be proven that way. I think that we should just concentrate on this on a more spiritual level anyhow, because I think in the end of the day that spiritually you're going to get more out of that yourself.
Well, you're going to get the answer that you were meant to get. People who go at it from a strictly scientific aspect are trying to get what they call, definitive proof. They're trying to be, the most relevant in the field and saying, look, this is a very, non-biased bit of evidence because it was generated, it was captured by, a machine, by a box, by something other than, a human. So it has no dog in the fight. It just has, this is what was captured by, a bit of a machinery. So it has to be accurate because it's not biased.
True. Very true. So, you've written a book called When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigations. Can we talk a little bit about that book?
We sure can.
I have not gotten a chance to read that yet, and I'm mad because I read so much that it isn't funny. That's really all I do. Other than watch football on TV, I read. And I'm not caught up yet. I'm not caught up yet on everything, but I am going to read that because, from what I hear, it's a pretty amazing book. So I want to hear a little bit about it.
Well, the reason I wrote When the Dead Speak is because my years of the paranormal, I've had many experiences, and I've seen how paranormal investigators work and how they interact, either doing historical locations, TV shows, residential cases. And there's hundreds of books out there on people talking about their experiences and talking about every haunted location in every city in every state. And I noticed that one thing wasn't quite being addressed, and that is how we are affected personally and energetically when we go into haunted locations and how we interact with paranormal entities and how this can actually start affecting us in our mood, affecting us in our health, and affecting us in our lives. And I wrote it in 2015, and I'd already started the book. I finished it in 2015, but in 2015, that was the year, sadly, that Mark and Debbie Constantino passed away. And I'm sure your listeners are familiar with Mark and Debbie Constantino, but I'll touch on it again, they were very famous in the paranormal field of being able to gather EVPs like it was nobody's business. I have been in the same room with them several times, sitting right next to them, and they're gathering EVPs like crazy, and I have the same equipment, and I'm not getting anything. I mean, they had such a gift with communicating with the paranormal. But they had a lot of domestic issues communicating with each other.
Okay.
And I'm not really going to talk bad about them, but in 2015, they did kill each other in a murder-suicide. And I saw them 3 months before they passed away. I booked them for an investigation. And, Debbie took me aside, and she had said that things had started to kind of come home with her. And at first she was excited about it because she thought, okay, I can communicate with things when I go on locations. I can communicate things in their house. This is great. They really like me. They're gathering to me. They're coming to me for help. And it started to become an issue. And it started problematic. And so she reached out to a demonologist, and he basically told her, he goes, Debbie, I can come in there and clean everything out of that house and wipe it clean. But unless you change how you're working, how you're dealing with this energetically, it's not going to do a bit of good. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with either an imprint of a haunted location or you're dealing just with spirits in general, it starts to kind of layer on you, kind of like an onion, little by little. And you might not notice it at first, but it might get to the point where I've seen people who are kind of like weirdly drawn to like really negative locations. I've seen people get like really depressed from investigating. Just in general, their demeanor just starts changing. I've seen health issues. And so this really wasn't something that anybody was touching on, either in the TV shows or, anything. They just go, oh, I'm being possessed, or, I'm going to do some sage, and, that's going to be it. But they really weren't going into it as to how to go into a location safely and be cognizant of these kind of energies, deal with it, and be able to come out safely. And so that was the main impetus of the book, and I actually did dedicate the book to Debbie Constantino, because I finished it in the year that she passed away. So it deals a lot with why locations become haunted. Is it the trauma of an event? Is it ley lines? Is it electromagnetic fields? Is it, why one house, like my parents' house, would be haunted and maybe not the neighbor's house? So we kind of touch on, why this might be. And then we also kind of go into places I've investigated one by one, and I'll tell them exactly what happened during an investigation. And then I have a subsequent chapter that I call like from a psychic's perspective. Say, okay, this kind of happened. How should you deal with it? So it's basically going into an investigation, how to deal when things kind of go wrong and kind of recognizing that. So I've got some criticisms. Oh, why didn't you deal more with, equipment? Why didn't you talk about how do you use the equipment and, all the equipment that's in the field? Well, I didn't intentionally, because I thought that would really just date the book. The field is advancing so quickly as far as people developing equipment that if I touched on what was new in the field when I wrote the book, they'd say, well, we're leaps and bounds beyond that. We're on, Ovilus 11, right now, and she was only talking about Ovilus 3, kind of thing. So I intentionally kind of left some of the equipment, how the equipment works. I did touch on it a bit, your basic, the Ovilus, the digital recorder, millimeters, REM pods, that sort of thing, and using those during an investigation. But I really wanted to focus on the oldest and main piece of equipment that somebody brings into an investigation, and that's them. That's their body. You sense things, you feel things, you smell things. You have all these senses that are picking up on things, and your brain is taking in all this information. So it's really important that you understand how that piece of equipment works, because it goes with you on every investigation. That's basically how the book touches on, how you, as a piece of equipment, can go into a location safely, deal with what's in there, and come out also safely.
That's awesome. And that was actually smart of you to do it that way with the equipment, because then the book, it doesn't date itself, like you said, it keeps it fresh and relevant. So I think that was very, very smart, a very smart move.
I try.
Well, it's neat that you say how people are a piece of equipment like that, because I got to speak with Ralph Sarchi a few weeks back. Do you know who that is?
Mm-hmm. I've heard the name, yes.
Yeah, very, very, he's one of the Catholic Church's lead demonologists, and they made a Hollywood movie about him, and he wrote a pretty terrifying book called Deliver Us from Evil. And that's what Ralph was talking to me about, was how he doesn't really use equipment. He goes in and he trusts his instincts, and he uses his senses, and that's how he knows when he's investigating like a possession case, he uses his psychology and he uses his senses and he smell and everything that's going on. And, he says, I'm the best piece of equipment that I have. And I just think it's interesting that you guys kind of are the same on that. It's pretty neat.
Well, it's a certain point of view. I mean, a lot of people rely primarily on their equipment, and I also do use equipment in every investigation I go on. My theory is I'm using equipment to validate and to document what I'm already experiencing. If I go into a room and I just leave a recorder in there for 6 hours and I come back out and I hear a little clomp on the floor, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, this place is haunted because I got a recording of some footsteps. But I felt nothing when I went in there. I mean, that's not even pointless. We're going to touch back on, demonology and psychology and why people do paranormal investigations in the first place. I mean, yeah, there's going into these beautiful historical occasions and documenting things, but one of the demonologists I know, his name is Adam Bly. He was also featured on Paranormal State and a few of the other shows. And I attended one of his lectures. And he was saying, I really hate it when I watch these, paranormal shows and, people go in there and they get these EVPs and this EVP says, help me. And they get all excited. And then they go home and, they clean up the EVP and they put it on their YouTube page. Yeah. Well, so what did you do for the spirit or whoever it was who was asking for help? Oh, right. Well, I don't know. We set the recorder in the room and we came back, later that day and just picked it up. We didn't even know what was happening. It's like, well, these aren't little trick ponies that you go and you poke with a stick, to make them perform tricks. This person reached out across God knows how many layers of existence and consciousness to somehow create a bandwidth of a voice to actually ask for help, and you do nothing. And that's when I kind of had the head-smacking epiphany of, gee, I better start doing something when, I'm going on an investigation and actually try to help spirits when I go to these locations. It wasn't until actually then that I started picking up on learning Reiki and, enhancing the psychic abilities and all that kind of thing, because at that point, it was just all about documenting evidence. Right. Later on, I said, well, I better really start seeing what I can do to help these spirits.
I think there's a lot to be said about that, about you doing that. And I also think it's the same with like some of these paranormal shows and some of these paranormal teams that they go into maybe somebody who's having a problem with a haunted house, but they just go in and give them validation. Like they don't help them with the haunting or, do anything like that. That bothers me too, the same.
And sometimes going into a residential case, it just can make matters worse, because now you're validating, oh yeah, your house is really creepy and haunted. Yeah, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Here's some sage and a couple candles.
Yeah, it's silly.
But a lot of times a residential case will have a lot of very earthly issues. It will have a lot of, is somebody having some sort of, domestic issues? Is somebody having substance abuse issues? Is somebody having mental issues within that house? Are those mental, domestic, substance issues causing somewhat paranormal activity? Are they inviting this kind of energy in, or is it vice versa?
Right.
You have to do several investigations and a lot of research when doing a residential case to decide, what exactly is happening at this house. Is the family, the living, causing the issues, or is something paranormal coming in and actually affecting them energetically? And it's a very fine line and legal line to cross at that point. So you have to, tread very, very lightly in doing residential cases.
Sure. And, I wanted to ask you, while we're kind of on this, you mentioned the onion and the investigators, when they're going in, getting all those layers added to them. And then we just talked about is it vice versa? Is it the people causing the paranormal issues, or is it the paranormal issues causing problems in the people's life? Do you think that there are people walking around that maybe have some of these layers on them now and have issues that don't even know it?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
They might think it is a mental issue. I'll just give a couple examples. A young girl came in to do, I think it was actually like an oracle card reading, and I was there with one other lady friend, and we're both looking at this girl, and we kind of both look at each other and kind of look at her again. And when somebody with abilities, and we all have abilities, we just kind of need to work on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But she looked like she was kind of had an overlay of mud on her, and you could see this kind of cord coming out of her abdomen, her solar plexus area, and coming out. And the more we kind of talked with her about what was going on in her life, she started to explain that there was an older gentleman, coworker, who was kind of like giving her emails and said he was like watching over her and protecting her. And the more she kind of talked, the kind of less we like really believed the intention of this male coworker.
Mm-hmm.
And it, from what we could gather just by physically looking at her and getting her story, this male coworker was actually like corded to her and like sucking her energy out, and it was very non-consensual, and it was, a borderline, abuse case. But he's doing it like on a psychic level, so obviously nobody can prosecute him for it. But she thought he was helping her. But just by looking at her and seeing this kind of overlay of this kind of dirty sludge and how it was affecting her mood, yeah, once you feel somebody kind of corded to you, they can actually suck out, your energy.
Kind of like an energy vampire or an emotional vampire.
Kind of, definitely. And I've done this experiment several times with another friend of mine. And what we do is, when you talk to somebody, either at work or somebody in your family, somebody you know, and they just they just drain you. They make you feel belittled. They make you feel unworthy, and they're staring you down. They say one thing you can do is you put one hand, I'm taking my right hand here, and put it like right at your throat. Just like tap your collarbones. You take your other arm and fold it across your stomach. So that's actually creating a shield, your energetic shield, so they can't get to your solar plexus, which is your area of self-protection, and they can't get to your throat chakra, which is how you express yourself. Once you've protected yourself that way, if they're still making eye contact and making you feel that way, turn your body 30 degrees, and you will feel this tremendous just whack, this shift, as it completely cuts off that cord. And so I want people, if they have a person in their life that's treating them that way, try that experiment, and you will be amazed at how well it works. So this type of negotiating with the energy and being able to control it also carries over, into the paranormal field. People ask me, well, like, what was your scariest happening energetically when this happened? And it wasn't so much to me because I really have strong boundaries in it, but I witnessed it firsthand, and that was just as scary. It was one of our last investigations, and yes, I have to say Mark and Debbie Constantino were there, and at this point I think they were bringing in really bad energy with them. We were at a location that is not necessarily known for bad energy. We were down in San Diego on the Berkeley ferry ship that was owned by the Maritime Museum. And we had done another location the day before. We had done another one of the ships, and everything was fine with this group of about 20 people. We were going to meet for dinner right before this investigation. And two of the girls kind of called up, and they tried to cancel out. They were like, no, you'll be fine. It's already paid for. Don't worry about it. You feel fine. And they said, it's okay, we'll show up. And during the dinner, they started to proceed to tell us that they had really bad dreams that night before, that something had told them not to trust us, that not to listen to what we were saying, not that we were not there to protect them. And we said, that's nonsense. Of course we're here to protect you. What did this voice sound like? And I don't know, it was really vague. And they just shook it off. So we started the investigation, and I kid you not, like 10 minutes into it, their eyes just kind of dilated, and they're staring at us, and they said, "You guys look funny." They're like, "What do you mean we look funny?" And they just started breaking out into a sweat. And they said, they were so terrified, and they said, something was making us look like demons, that something was trying to put an overlay onto us, and to them, we were looking evil.
Mm.
And so at that point, my friend said, "Okay, you guys are going up deck. We're getting you out of this energy." So my one friend takes the two ladies upstairs and immediately starts doing Reiki, calling in angels, clearing the space with them. So I got the rest of the group downstairs below deck. We're doing an EVP session, and one of the other seasoned investigators says, "Kitty, there's something wrong with that girl over there." I'm like, "Oh, geez."
Yeah.
And I see a girl, and we're just like 15 minutes into the investigation.
Wow.
And she's doubled over, and she says, "Something's after me. Something's after me." And sure enough, something will come at you in the solar plexus. It attacks you in your abdomen because that's your area of self-protection. So that's when people start feeling, queasy, dizzy, nauseous, because that's where they try to enter you. So I said, "Okay, you go upstairs." They're dropping like flies at this point.
Yeah.
So what I do is rather than just avoid that area, I stand in the exact spot where that person was, so I can feel energetically what's going on. So sure enough, I start feeling this little kind of tickly queasiness trying to come into my stomach area. And I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't play that game, dude." And I just, energetically just pushed it away. But that's how they'll try to kind of sneak in is through your abdomen area. So we had already 3 people upstairs. And all night long, we were just getting the worst, just horrible EVPs. I mean, it was like right out of The Exorcist.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just the worst language, the worst profanities, I won't even repeat what some of the things were. It was just horrible. And this was supposed to be a location. It wasn't even, we were supposed to get like little wet footprints on the floor or something. It wasn't known for being just this horrible. But all night long, it was just disastrous. And one of the things that we would do as a group investigation is we would do what's called toning. And I do discuss this in the book. And it's a type of kind of like a chant. So we gather around in a circle and we hold hands. And basically what it is, it's getting everybody on the same vibrational page. And you just take a deep breath, and it's 3 sets of these tones. And you just slowly exhale in this long, droning, ah, om, God, whatever you want to say. And after 3, everybody is very mellow. It raises the vibration of the room. It kind of sets the tone of what's allowed within the location because you raise the vibration of the room. Usually that will last us all night, doing one toning before we start an investigation. We had to stop and regroup and retone 4 times during that investigation because things were just going so out of control.
Yeah.
They're like, nope, the energy was just getting so bad that, okay, everybody stop, gather around, we're going to retone again, we're going to set the parameters of what's allowed within this investigation, of what's allowed in this room. And you'd be surprised at how well that does work. You're only inviting a certain vibrational energy into your space when you do these toning exercises. That's why a lot of times monks will do it. They set this vibrational boundary so they can stay within that meditational state. It's basically the same thing. But I've never had to stop and retone 4 times during investigation than I did at that Berkeley investigation.
And you're thinking it's because of the energy that they brought in?
I think it was contributing.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, they were very good friends of mine. I'm not going to really diss what happened to them.
Sure.
I could really see a shift with them over the course of the many years I knew them.
Yeah, any good friend should pick up on that. I mean,
and that was 3 months before they passed away.
wow.
So it was kind of really coming to a head. So that's one thing that people really do need to be, cognizant of when they're dealing with people or dealing with locations. If that energy is starting to get out of control, I mean, you've seen these people on the TV shows. I got to go outside. I got to go upstairs. It's a way of, cutting off that cord to that energy, rebalancing before you go back in.
Sure. You've already solved something for me tonight, just by this. So my wife, she doesn't really, she believes in some of this stuff and some of it she really doesn't, she's kind of right down the middle, but my wife has the hardest time going into any older location. And it's really strange, Kitty, because she'll go in and she starts complaining that her stomach doesn't feel right. And then she almost gets like a vertigo where she's like, this floor is not right. That's what she says all the time.
Like the floor is sinking.
Yeah, the floor is not right.
Yeah, it's falling into the floor.
Yep, it's unbalanced. It's not right. And, I never put two and two together, but I'll bet you, because every time we go into an old place or anything like that, she can't be in there long because it really messes with her. It makes her feel sick. So I'm going to use some of these things.
Have her try keeping her hands in front of her stomach and just being aware that it's not her feeling sick. It's something external that she's being affected by. And the more she just becomes aware of that energy, the more she'll be able to control it when she goes into a space. My sister has a hard time dealing with it. We were at the Stanley Hotel in a room that's really aggressive and active. And as soon as she just barely walked across the threshold, that's as far as she got. She goes, I'm not going any further in this room. So she's standing at the doorway. And sure enough, about a half hour in, she's doubled over and says, I got to get out of here. And I could see like little twinkly lights around her. And she had to leave the room.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many times my wife has had to do that, where she won't even walk into a room. Like she comes up and she's like, "Nah, I can't go in there. Like I'm not. It feels weird." So I just never put two and two together, but I bet you she's picking up on some energy, and I bet you that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably is. She's very, empathic to it, but she doesn't know how much it can affect her, so she's not really being able to control it.
Yeah.
And there are things that will kind of take advantage of that, or it could just be like the imprint of, the energy that's just affecting her.
Yeah, sure. I mean, see?
I'll bet she has her arm across her stomach and her other one like on her chest, like right at the base of her throat. She'll actually feel a lot better. We're
going to try that next time. Because where we live, there's nothing but old stuff down here. Every store you go into.
I'm so jealous.
I know, it's insane, but I'm also jealous of you because
the Carolinas are so pretty.
Yeah, they're beautiful down here, and it's neat. It's a whole different thing. We had to learn this whole culture down here. Like all the porches are painted in haint. You know what haint is?
Oh yeah, the pale blue.
Yeah, haint blue, so that the spirits can't cross over.
My sister redid her house and had the top of her porch painted that haint blue.
Yep.
Keep those bad spirits out.
Yeah, we were sitting there one day eating lunch out on a patio someplace, and I'm like, why is every ceiling down here on porches painted in blue? So we started asking, and they told us that's why, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is awesome. But
it's not only gorgeous, but it's really neat how these people will just embrace these traditions just to be maybe on the safe side.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm just going to paint it a haint blue just in case. Besides, it looks pretty anyway. But just to be safe, just to be safe.
Right. Thing. But I'm really jealous of you because you got something out there that I've always wanted to do, and that's the Queen Mary.
It is my favorite. She is closed right now. Very sad. They're having some issues with her lessee and the owner, which is the city of Long Beach. I haven't been able to get aboard her since 2020. I live about 40 minutes away from her.
Oh, wow.
On a clear day, I can actually see her.
Really?
Yeah, because I live up kind of high on a hill. She is absolutely everything that everybody says about her and more. She's huge, she's beautiful, she's haunted, she's historic. I'm very, very, very fond of the Queen Mary.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Fave.
I would love to someday do that, man. I'll tell you, it's I'd love to check her out someday because it's fascinating. Some of the things that people have seen and some of the things I've read about, just the haunted history of it is incredible.
Well, there have been some traumatic things that have happened aboard the Queen Mary, but the majority of the evidence that not only I get aboard the ship, but that most people get aboard are spirits that do not seem trapped on the ship, that are spirits that have the same affinity for the ship and are there because they want to be
on
that ship, that they love the ship as much as we do.
That's even better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and people, talk about different areas. The whole entire ship is just great. You can, the staterooms, the pool room, the boiler room, every hallway in that ship, there's just stuff everywhere going on. And you could just feel it everywhere. And it just makes it that much cooler. And you go into a place where they say such and such happens. You see the little girl Jackie in the pool room, and you'll find something completely different happening in that room. I was in the pool room one time, and there's like the pool, and then there's like an upper deck that goes in there. So we're all in the lower part, and we weren't getting a whole lot of activity at the time, so we tried to just try something different. And one of the members of the group was actually in the Navy at the time. So he said, I'm going to, call out and see if I can get any naval officers that might be aboard the ship, rather, any sailors as opposed to, just some random spirit. And he said that, when he calls out to the air, to the crowd in the dark, I've been in the Navy for, 11 years. Can I hear our song, which is Anchors Aweigh? And when you get an EVP, you don't hear it at the time, but you hear it on the recorder.
Yeah.
When you get audible evidence, dollars to donuts, I'll hear it at the time, but no recorder will pick it up.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
I don't know if that's your case or not, but every time I hear something with my own ear, not a single piece of that equipment will capture it. Every single time. So anyway, we're listening like Horton Hears a Who, and we're straining our ears, and we start hearing something very soft, very low. Sounds like one voice, sounds like two voices, sounds like five voices, and it starts getting a little louder, a little bit more melodic. By the time, probably a minute, I'm getting all goosebumpy again because it was so fabulous being there at the moment. By the time a minute had passed, it sounded like 50 spirit voices up on that balcony. We could hear them singing Anchors Aweigh.
Wow.
And so we're all trying to record it. So we're all trying to stay quiet, but all of our jaws were just dropped. Our eyes are saucers, and we're all pointing at each other and nodding and, smiling and stuff. And nobody got it on their recorders, but all of us in that room heard it at the time. And it was just such a special, special experience because it showed that they wanted to be there, that they were still proud of being on that ship. And they weren't, these trapped, lost souls that, some of us, have to carry over. That's the majority of the spirits that I've encountered on the Queen Mary are people who just really, really love that ship, as much as, the people today love going on that ship. And that's what makes it even more special because you're excited about being on that ship and they're excited about being on that ship. You just kind of share that intimate moment with spirits of the past, and you're kind of adding to those chapters of that beautiful ship.
And I'm sure that does a lot with
what really makes it so special.
I'm sure it does a lot with the energy too that comes out of there, because I think that if you go into a place with very positive energy, a lot of times you're going to get positive energy back. And I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, I really think it kind of dragged it down a little bit when they started doing some of the Halloween haunt and building some of the mazes and stuff within the ship. I don't think they were really, and now the ship's kind of in a little bit of disrepair. I don't think that makes them very happy either. But the majority of the time, the evidence that I would get on that ship would just be fabulous. And it was funny, one of the EVPs I got in there, I didn't even know I'd gotten at the time. And a friend of mine and I were doing some, work in the infirmary area, and we got some evidence, and we went home, and she was like so excitedly showing her recorder for evidence to her husband. And he's listening. He's like, "Who's Rosemary?" I'm like, "What do you mean, who's Rosemary?" It's just, myself and Kitty. And he's like, "Well, somebody says Rosemary is my name." And she's like, "What do you mean?" He was right there. Listen. So we play the recording back. And like in the first 10 seconds, you hear this very, very clear Class A EVP of this woman going, "Rosemary is my name."
Wow.
And I totally had missed it. I don't know how I'd missed that before, but I tell people when I do EVP sessions, and this was one thing that Debbie Constantino taught me, when you go into a location, you turn on that recorder. You hold it up in the air and you turn that sucker on as soon as you walk in that room. They know what those recorders are, and if they're ready to talk, they're going to start talking.
Interesting.
I've got 90% of my EVPs in the first 20 seconds and in the last 20 seconds of my recording time.
Oh, wow.
I always do short, like burst sessions, like about 3-4 minutes. I'll turn on the recorder, and I don't say anything for about 10 seconds. Then I'll do my questioning, and then I'll tell them, "I'm going to turn this recorder off to see if we heard you, and then maybe we can, continue this conversation." But I don't turn the recorder off. I let it run for like another 20 seconds. And then I turn the recorder off. And 90% of my EVPs are in those quiet spaces before I start talking and then before I turn it off.
Interesting.
That's me. I don't know, but that was something that Debbie Constantino taught me, and she was doing something right, and so I just started adapting that protocol, and it's worked really well for me.
Might as well take them pointers from somebody who was best in the business, right?
Definitely.
So I've got a question for you. What exactly
you
is...
Do?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good time to ask.
I like asking questions. So what exactly is Reiki? I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what it is. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
I sure can. Reiki is the conjunction of two Japanese words, Rei meaning universal, Ki meaning energy. So you've got universal energy. So, you talk about, Star Wars and the Force, pretty much the same thing. It's energy that's emanating all around us. If you want to talk about Tesla, he's talking about everything's moving at a certain vibration. The only reason we can touch and see a certain thing, a certain object, is because we're moving at the same vibration it is. Well, to channel this kind of universal energy, it basically is kind of a guided meditation in order to tap into it. What Reiki can and cannot do, what Reiki can do is it can balance space, it can balance a location, it can balance the body, and it can balance the flow of your energy throughout your body. It also can transcend time and space. There was an experiment where these people had had been a horrible earthquake, I think it was. I'm probably going to get my facts wrong, but I think it had been a horrible earthquake like in the 1940s in a given state. They took all the medical charts of everyone who had been hospitalized during this earthquake. They divided them in half randomly, and they did this Reiki healing energy on just the medical charts. Then they went back later and looked at the medical charts, and the charts that they had done Reiki on, those people had healed faster. Now, this earthquake had happened decades earlier, but yet they were working on the charts in a different time frame. You don't actually have... It's really bizarre how it can work. I started using it, working with spirits as a way to help them cross over and help them heal. Because a lot of times when people die, they might die under traumatic circumstances. By utilizing this Reiki, you're transcending through that space, so you're actually with them at that moment, and you're able to calm them and help carry them over. Hospice nurses use Reiki quite a bit as a way of helping, the dying transition. It's a really good way of getting your chakras aligned. I'm actually also certified to work with oncology patients who are undergoing, cancer treatments and, chemo as a way of helping their body heal. Reiki doesn't heal a person. What Reiki actually does is it helps the body heal itself. The body actually has the power in each cell to heal itself. So what the Reiki does is you kind of pull out all the gunk and all the negative stuff, and then you can put in the good energy after it. So you're basically channeling this good energy and being able to put it into a body, put it to a location. I used to do clinics at my veterinary clinic, and they would bring in their pets. So I would actually Reiki the room to make the room more balanced, and then people would bring in their pets. And you could kind of guide your hand like about 6 inches over, somebody's body, and you can kind of feel that just little bit of tension between your energy and their energy, that little kind of bit of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get that connection of what's feeding into your hands. And your hands will actually get quite warm while doing this. And some people, they just want to come in and they just want to flood the body with good energy. I'm going to throw all this good juju in and make everything better. That's putting lipstick on a pig. What you have to do is you actually have to feel what's going on in a location or a body, pull as much bad stuff out as you can, neutralize the body, and then you can start putting in the good stuff. It's really funny when I go to like clinics and stuff, and people who are really classically trained in Reiki, they're swirling their hands counterclockwise, and they're running their hands back and forth and doing all this stuff. And I'm basically looking at this person, I'll hone in on one area of their body. Yeah, there's something wrong with your right knee, and your boyfriend doesn't appreciate you at home, does he? I mean, 'cause you just start picking up on everything that's going on within their psyche and their body.
Right.
It's like you're doing this whole psychological thing with them at the same time.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's a really good tool for a paranormal investigator to have, because especially like somebody like with your wife, because it actually helps you identify the intention of energies. You can go into a room and like get a read, like you said, on how a room feels, how a person feels, and you start recognizing what's going on energetically in a room and being able to adjust it. So I think it'd also be really good maybe for your wife to kind of do a little bit of reading on Reiki and maybe take a couple classes or whatever. There's really no wrong way of doing it. It's just a way of helping you recognize intention of energy and being able to tweak it a little bit. So I think it would be really useful.
Yeah, for
like
sure, because
touch in on that.
She works in the mammography field, and she specializes in the breast cancer type part of it, and I think that she would really benefit from that.
Well, yeah, there's a lady out here. All she does is teach. She's a nurse practitioner, and she teaches people different levels of Reiki, and then she certifies you to work with oncology patients, and she also does clinics at horse rescues as well, which I've also gone to. But it's helping the body. It's really kind of touchy because your body is getting the poisons put into it through the chemo. So you obviously don't want to pull the chemo out, but you want to help the body adjust to recognizing that the chemo was there to help and help pull out as much bad stuff in the body as you can, and also help alleviate, a lot of the nausea and discomfort that goes along with chemo. So that's kind of how you actually help a person with who's battling cancer. You can't just go in there and say, I'm going to cure this person's cancer today. It's one of the tools that you use during the treatment process. And you can't overwhelm a person who's undergoing chemo. Their body just can't handle a lot of it. So you do little bits of the Reiki to kind of complement what's going on with the chemo. So it's mostly making the person more comfortable and then helping that person kind of help the cells heal themselves.
Sure. You mentioned the veterinarian clinic. Does Reiki also work on animals?
Oh, heck yeah. The lady who teaches with the oncology, she about once a month we go to a horse rescue, and all these traumatized and rescue horses and Mustangs. We do Reiki on them. When I first learned how to do Reiki, I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm going to help spirits. I'm going to, Reiki locations, make the energy a little bit better. But I still had that little tiny bit of doubt because it was really a leap of faith that this was actually working. I felt the heat in my hands. I could feel the energy kind of flowing, but it was still this little leap of faith. And, I'm very left brain. I'm really, try to be scientifically minded about it, but I just had that little tiny kernel of doubt. My cat became very sick. My cat was diagnosed with cancer. And he had this large lymph node. And, my cat was my world. And I didn't know what to do. The vet said he's too old at the time. The cat was 14. And the vet says he can't handle the chemo. He can't handle the stress. He's not, he won't do it. There's nothing really I can do at this point. So I took the cat home. I laid on the bed, laid the cat on my stomach, and I just, kind of had my hands over him a little bit, about 6 inches, space. And I just said, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a practicing Christian, but I just called out. And I said, if there is a universal power out there, if my spirit guide, if an Archangel Michael, somebody who wants to come forward, this is the time that I need proof that this Reiki is going to help. I don't need it for me. I need it for this cat who needs help. I really need some validation. I don't ask for validation on anything else. I'm not going to ask, please. But I really, I was in tears at this point.
Yeah.
I felt another set of hands on top of mine.
Wow.
And it was the most surreal moment at that point because that wasn't really what I was asking for, but I was asking for validation that what this Reiki was going to do, that what this healing was going to do was actually of some benefit. The cat lived to be 22 years old.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. At 14, they had pretty much written him off.
Wow, that is amazing.
This little scrappy cat lived to be 22.
That's a great story.
Everybody benefits it slightly differently. There's different methodologies to it. But I really recommend it to anybody who's in the healthcare field. I think a lot of hospitals have Reiki practitioners in them now. And any paranormal investigator, because you're dealing with energy, this is a really good way of just kind of reading intentions of energy and trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And it really goes a long way in dealing with like negative spirits and also how to cross spirits over too, because it kind of just puts the whole power drive into being able to manipulate energy. It's a really good tool to have in your tool set.
Yeah, I'm going to do some digging into that and a little bit of research because it sounds pretty fascinating, and why the hell not, right?
It certainly can do no harm. If anything else, if you're just saying, I just need some other power from above to kind of help and take this person home, or I'm just trying to make this person more comfortable. You go into it with always good intentions. So in that respect, there's really no wrong way of doing it. You're basically just asking the universe to help you aid someone else.
Yeah. Well, while we're on animals, do you believe the animals have a sixth sense?
I think they do. I have seen videos of animals like chattering up in the top corners of the ceiling when other family member pet has passed away. I don't think they want to utilize it in the same way we do. When I was in the house I was growing up, and I'd see the cat staring down the long hallway and then running, and then we'd hear the footsteps. So I knew they were picking up on things. But I just don't think because they're so kind of in between more of the veil than we are anyway, they aren't really recognizing that, oh yeah, this is a dead person, this is a live person, I need to react to this person differently. And I think, but oh yeah, they definitely have, the sixth sense about them.
Yeah. I have talked to a couple paranormal investigators that actually use cats and dogs on their investigation. And they're pretty successful with it. They're real small, just a couple of people that do it, but they noticed that they lived in a very haunted house, and they noticed that their dog, every time they'd have something strange happen, their dog was very alert, very, very, telling, very alert. And they said, "What the heck? Let's try this." Took him on a couple investigations, and sure enough, every time they're about to catch something, their dog's pretty alert. And they pick up on that, so then that's when they start shooting the cameras and doing things like that. And I mean, maybe it's just they got a special dog. I don't know, but
no, I've seen that a lot where the dogs are very sensitive, or especially if something is negative, like they'll refuse to go into a certain room or they'll refuse to go upstairs. And they're like, come on, Rex, come on. And the dog's like, oh, heck no, I'm not going up there. And it's like, I think you need to pay attention to what the dog is telling you, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but yeah,
sure.
Definitely. I had a Scottish Terrier who passed away last year. And she was basically in hospice care. She had cancer really bad. And this was like on a Monday. I'm sitting in the living room, and I could see little, like, basketball-shaped shadows, at floor level moving around the house. And I just knew at that point. I go, those are spirit animals, and they've come for her. They're waiting for her. She's going to die soon. And I texted my friend, and I said what I saw, and she said, well, does Lily see them yet? And I said, no, but the cat saw them. Cat reacted to them. And I said, but the dog hasn't seen them yet. And then I said, well, she's not ready yet then. And so that was on a Monday, and she passed away 2 days later. So I tell people that because I know that animals don't go alone. I think somebody always comes for them to take them home.
Yeah.
And whether she knew who they were or not, there were at least 3 spirit animals here to, escort her, and when she was ready to go.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah,
I wasn't like, meditating or trying to be in a certain vibrational state. I was just, sitting in the living room and just happened to see them moving throughout the house. So not only did that happen, but my animals would hear things. I would hear something, and then my animals would react to it. So both of us were kind of hearing something paranormal. My husband passed away a few years ago, and I was coming up the walk, and I had not opened the gate yet. And within the yard, and my neighbors hear a lot too, I heard my husband's voice say, oh, look, it's Mommy. And as soon as I heard that voice, the dog started barking.
Wow.
So, and I hadn't even touched the gate yet to make the noise that they might have reacted to. So they hadn't heard me. They were reacting to the voice of my dead husband that I also had heard.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty cool moment too.
Yeah, that had to make you smile a little bit.
It did. My neighbors hear and feel him within the yard too, quite a bit.
Wow. That's pretty neat. It's I'm sure it's very comforting to know that he's still there and around, and gives you a little bit of comfort. Oh
yeah, they don't always stay around permanently, but they'll come, they'll go, and sometimes even if you ask, for a certain moment, to be there, they'll come in. I still occasionally see the Scotty dog come out of the bathroom and like hop up on the bed.
Yeah,
I've seen her about 3 times in the house.
I've got a great story. I don't know if I've told it on this show before, but
well, I haven't heard it yet, so I want to hear it.
Yeah, so when I was like 13 or 14, it was sometime in the 80s, I believe. Was at my friend Jason's house, and I'd get to go. Well, he was at his dad's house, so I'd get to go over there every couple of weekends or so, and they had this real nice, beautiful house, and they had 2 big dogs. And one was a black lab and one was a yellow lab. And very big part of their family, those 2 dogs, and everybody loved them. They were amazing dogs. Well, Jason's dad had just built him this incredible like bedroom down in the basement. And I mean, this thing he was so spoiled. It was ridiculous. He had every video game known to man. And, you know,
he was the firstborn, right?
He was the only child.
Oh,
So,
yeah, okay.
yeah. So, when I would go over there, or the first time I went over there and the bedroom was finished, we kind of pulled an all-nighter, you know. They ordered us pizza and we literally stayed up till I don't know when and played video games. And I think it was like just Nintendo or Sega or something weird back then. But I'd gone over there, and the problem with the bedroom being in the basement is I had to walk upstairs to go to the bathroom. And so one night, the dogs also slept in the basement, but not in his room, just outside by the washer and dryer or whatnot. So he came out one night, and there was the dog, and I petted the dog, and I went upstairs. There were both the dogs. I petted them both, walked upstairs, went to the bathroom, came back. The black one was up there with me, followed me up there, petted him. He stayed at the top of the steps. I walked downstairs, and he was whining. And I walked in Jason's room, and I said, hey, I think Augie needs to go out. He is whining at the top of the steps. And I'm not kidding you, Kitty. He broke down and started crying, like bawling. And I'm like, well, what is going on? Like, why is this happening? Why are you crying? I don't understand. He says, oh, he passed away. They had to put him to sleep Monday. And I'm like,
oh my God, you just petted him.
Yep. And boy, I'll tell you what, we peed in Coke bottles the rest of the night. Neither of us wanted to go upstairs because we were scared.
Oh.
But it was, you know, I think that's natural when you're 13 or 14 to be absolutely freaked out about that. But it was a really, really, I remember really thinking about that. Like, I know that I touched that dog. I know that dog followed me all the way up, waited outside that bathroom door, and then stayed at the top of the steps. And I know it, you know, like, so it was a real thing to me, you know. But
it's a real special moment now looking back.
It was. And I felt terrible that I had just said that, you know, because I didn't realize, no one had told me that this had happened, and I didn't notice it. Didn't, you know, it never really came up. So it was a crazy moment, but it was cool at the same time, you know?
Yeah, then you understand how special that dog was to that family, and that you actually saw it as like a full body apparition.
Yeah,
and
for
actually,
sure.
You know, touched it. That was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I know. I
when
touched
you see
it.
the full body apparitions and you actually like interact with them for a few minutes, and then you realize that person really wasn't there. Yeah, that's the best. I've had a couple of those on the Queen Mary.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, yeah. I think that I heard about one of those.
One of the best one was, I actually thought she was an employee.
Yeah.
And the Queen Mary is longer than the Titanic. And there's one on B deck. There's one really long hallway that runs basically the whole length of the ship. And a friend of mine and I were on the ship. We'd stayed the night, and we were up at about, you know, it was like 10 in the morning, you know, not exactly the witching hour, you know. It's like 10 in the morning, and we're walking down this hallway. And the way that the staterooms are set up, it's this long hallway, and then there's little tiny short hallways about 8 feet deep that go off to the staterooms. And much of the Queen Mary is still original, so it has these big, heavy, levered door handles that make a lot of noise, you know, when you unlock them and latch them, make a lot of clacking noise.
Yeah.
And so we were walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden this lady, you know, turned off of one of those little hallways and starts walking with us, which I thought was kind of weird because, you know, when you're not with this group of people, you usually kind of give people a little bit more of a personal space. And we'll either walk ahead of them or behind them. You don't just automatically start walking next to somebody you don't know.
Sure.
This is, you know. So she starts walking like right next to us. So at first I was thinking, okay, that's a little odd. And I kind of look at her, and she's dressed in total like late 1930s, early 1940s clothing. She's got on like the gray tweed skirt with a matching little jacket, and she's got on those little short white gloves. And so I said, okay, they have certain events on the Queen Mary where people dress in costume, like a 1930s event, and maybe they're hiring people to dress in clothing, and she's an employee. So then she takes her fingertips on her nice little white gloves, and she starts running them along the veneered hallway wall as she's walking along.
Weird.
And okay, that's a little odd, too. And for the life of me, I don't remember if I said good morning to her. I don't think I did, because I'm just thinking how odd she is. And so finally she says something to the effect of, I just really love it here. I just stay here. And then she just turned onto one of those little hallways to go to a stateroom. And my friend and I, we walk, I kid you not, like 10 feet, and I stop. And I look at her, and I'm like, was she real?
Right.
And, it's 10 in the morning, and just seconds had passed when she had turned on. So I ran to the hallway where she was, and there was absolutely nobody there. And there's no way that she could have, put her card in, latched the knob and gone into a stateroom in the time that I stopped and ran back to go check to see if she was there.
That's amazing.
So I had this conversation with this lady. She looked just like a real person. She was absolutely solid. She wasn't translucent. She wasn't drifting. She wasn't floating. Just having conversation with somebody who absolutely was not there.
That is a really cool story, man. I mean,
oh, heck, yeah, she had dressed in the period clothing and everything.
You had to be I can see you there, standing there after it all hit you with this jaw-dropping smile on your face, right?
See spirits at 10 in the morning.
Right.
I spent a whole night of ghost hunting. We were going to go out for breakfast. It was like, what do you mean I have a full body apparition, at 10 in the morning? And that's like, we're just trying to wrap our heads around it. And there was nobody else dressed in period clothing on the ship. There was no employees dressed like that. There was no event going on. And just the way she's running her little fingertips along the wall, just acting just so bizarrely. And then just saying, I just love it here. I just stay here. And then she just turned off into another hallway and just poof, she was gone.
That is awesome. That is a great story.
Unfortunately, it's just a story because I obviously wasn't filming her, but I did have a witness. My friend was with me and she was right next to her. We just thought she was another person.
Hey, maybe it was meant to be just for you guys then.
A lot of times it is sometimes that. Some people will see a spirit and then somebody else will go back there and have absolutely no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But, well, hey, Kitty, I'm going to let you go because we've done talked each other's ears completely off, I think, at this point.
Well, you'll just probably have to have me back because I've got way more stories.
Oh, I definitely want to have you back because I'm going to tell you what, this is what I love about you. I mean, we've been friends on Twitter for quite a while and talked back and forth and never really got the chance to talk, but I have got to see, your Haunted Hotels episode, which was incredible. And I am going to read your book before I have you on next time. But the thing I love about you is your enthusiasm. Like, you absolutely love this stuff. You love this. And I love that about you.
I'm like a little kid bouncing up on the mattress, at 9:00 at night going, when are we going to go? When are we going to go? When are we going to go ghost hunting?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're nuts. You've had too much Mountain Dew.
No, that's my favorite thing about you. Like, you definitely have a passion for this. And it's something that you love. And I don't think there's anything better than grabbing your passion and just going with it, Oh,
well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, where can everybody find your book, your shows, your website, get a hold of you if they need to? Where can everybody do that at?
Well, I am on Twitter. My main Twitter page is under Paranormal Kitty, also Kitty_Janusz. That's JANUSZ. You can find my website at kittyjanusz.com. That's KITTYJANUSZ. So far, I have 2 books that have been published. I do have When the Dead Speak, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation. And I also do have Secrets Buried in the Lemon Grove, which is more of a younger reader, goosebumps kind of book, but it also features a lot of the things that happened in the house when I was growing up, and I kind of wove this fictitious story around the true events of my haunted house when I was growing up. Both of those are available either on my website or on Amazon. When the Dead Speak is available in paperback and on Kindle. And I've been on couple TV shows that you can catch right now. I've been on Haunted Hospitals, which is season 3, episode 3, The Terror Twins. And I'm also on Ghost Adventures, their Graber House episode. So
Awesome.
You can catch me both of those if you want to take a look when I talk to Zach Bagans about what goes on at the Graber House in Ontario, California. And that was a really interesting conversation that we can have next time I'm on the show of what didn't make air and what happened at the Graber House.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do this again because I absolutely love talking with you. You are so easy to talk with, and I love picking your brain and hearing stories, and I've had a ton of fun this episode.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a good time. I would very much like to come back and chat a bit more.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Sounds good.
All right, Kitty. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and we're going to set something up for you to be on again. And I thank you for taking time to talk with me and my audience.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. Thanks again for listening, and good night.